everyone for coming today. My name is Hannah Pingree. I'm the Director of the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future. And this is our second official Maine Climate Council meeting. And I'm here with Jerry Reed, the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection. And we are super excited to have you all here today for what is going to be, I think, a really important day to hear from scientists and to really start working together in groups more actively, hearing from our colleagues about varying issues they're working on, really defining the scopes of our work. I think it will be, it's going to be a long day. I know everyone who signed up to be a member of the Maine Climate Council was looking forward to more meetings in 2020. I will say, so far, I am really impressed with the level of commitment and enthusiasm and just the time and effort that so many people in this room are putting into this work. Raise your hand if you're a member of the Maine Climate Council. You're sitting up front, so most people know who you are. Thank you. We're going to have you introduce yourself soon. Raise your hand if you're co-chairing one of the working groups or the Science and Technical Committee. Great. Heather, feel free to come on up here and sit down if you need to. Raise your hand if you're a member of a working group who's doing a lot of working right now. Thank you. I'm also extremely impressed and heartened to see the level of public engagement in so many of our working groups, people just showing up, committed, interested. So raise your hand if you are a member of the public who is here today and interested. Great. Thank you for being here. Raise your hand if you're a Maine legislator. Great. Thank you for being here today. We expect a few more. They're in the back of the room. They're everywhere. And they are also members of our working groups, our Maine Climate Council, and they are the people that we will be relying on to help us get these things across the finish line next year. Right, Representative Ketchel? So thank you all for being here today. We also expect, I think, up to 100 Maine youth who are coming at about 10 o'clock. A lot of them are coming by school bus. You're going to hear more from Anya Wright, our Youth Climate Council member, about her work and some of the interests and issues that Maine youth are most concerned about. They'll be here for part of the morning, hearing some of our science presentations. They are having some of their own workshops, a sort of separate track going on sort of independently today downstairs, so when they leave, it's not in protest to the scientists, so don't take offense, but they have some other activities planned downstairs. So again, I just really want to thank everyone here for the time and the commitment they're putting in. I would say we are really now in the stages in our 6 working groups and science committee where we sort of had the briefings, we've started to understand the magnitude of the issue, and we're about to really delve into process. And process is sometimes painful, and it never happens as quickly as we all would like. So again, I actually want to just thank you again in advance for what you're going to do between now and June. Sort of most important work of really making this happen. I want to especially thank the staff from my office, the Maine DEP, of some of the other agencies, and the facilitators who are really stepping up and doing a lot of heavy lifting. So just raise your hand if you're staff in some way. Great. I thank them. They were up. I can't even tell you how long it takes to make all these name tags, especially Cheryl. We're going to hear a lot from David Plum, who is from the Consensus Building Institute. We have been very lucky to receive an in-kind donation of their support for our work, for the process, for the Climate Council, for the stakeholder and public meetings you're going to hear more about later today. So David and Sophia on his team, Peter, who couldn't be here today, will start to becoming more and more important parts of just the process work, really helping us get to conclusions and do it in a way in which we can all still like each other at the end of June and November. So thank you, David, for being here. And Sophia, raise your hands over here. Great. So Jerry's going to say a little bit more and start us with some kind of a recap of some things that you already know, but I think it's important, again, to remind ourselves of the process and where we are in it. So, Jerry.
Thanks, Hannah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jerry Reed. I'm Commissioner of the Maine DEP and co-chair of the council with Hannah. And as she said, this is the last time that we will be getting together as the council, the subcommittee, and the working groups until June. So savor every moment of it. We'll start with a few kind of orientation slides just to get your flywheel spinning in the right direction. To remind everybody why we're here, LD 1679 was enacted last year, and that sets the reduction goals for greenhouse gas emissions that you're by now familiar with, 45% reduction by 2030 and a 2050 goal of 80% reduction using a 1990 baseline level. The bill also created the council and directed the council to mitigate the causes of and respond to the consequences of climate change. And of course, our responsibility is to come up with an updated climate action plan by the end of this year. So the mitigation strategies that the working groups are responsible for making recommendations to the council on are designed to do a number of things. Again, they will be necessary to meet the reduction goals, the 45% reduction goal by 2030, the 80% goal by 2050, and also the net zero goal that the governor has set forth in her recent executive order by 2045. The strategies must reflect the latest scientific and technological information available. They must draw on the technical feasibility and cost effectiveness of potential solutions, and they need to take into account the clean energy economy plan that we are developing and develop opportunities for good job creation and take into account the unique needs of Maine citizens. The adaptation strategies, again, I'm not going to read all of these verbatim, but a few things I think that stand out. These are all drawn from the statute also. The strategies will focus on how to improve resiliency of Maine communities, to prioritize the welfare of Maine citizens, especially vulnerable communities, and encourage the values of diversity, inclusion, and equity. So again, everything we're doing will need to take into account the unique needs of Mainers and Maine citizens and Maine communities, come up with solutions that work well for them. This is the organizational chart, which I'm sure by now you're familiar with. The Climate Council will be informed by the work of the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee, and then the working groups are also getting the benefit of the advice from that subcommittee as well. This is the roster of working group co-chairs. If your name appears on this slide, I guess I would say two things. First, it's too late to change your mind. And also, as Hannah was saying, we're very grateful for all the work, the time, and effort that you're putting into this really important enterprise. So thank you very much for that. I think Hannah's going to talk to us a little bit about the timeline and a couple of other slides before we turn it back over to David.
Great. So again, this is a review. There'll be a quiz at the end. I think most of you fit into a smaller room for our kickoff on September 26th. So that was our first meeting. Since then, the working groups have been meeting monthly, and they will continue to meet monthly until, our hope is until June, when they'll report out their recommendations. Over the course of so the next Climate Council meeting is in June, when we will hear back the recommendations of each of the working groups. Over the summer and fall, the Maine Climate Council will be considering all of those recommendations and prioritizing strategies for our action plan. And our action plan is due December 1st to the governor and legislature of this year, and then we will update that plan every 4 years. Obviously, our intention is that this is not just a plan, this is an action plan that gets implemented. That's why we're excited to have so many legislators who are engaged and involved, and clearly this is a priority of the governors. So really, starting next year will be the time frame in which we will figure out how to take action through legislation, through rulemaking, through executive action, through the work of communities. So the thing is about the Maine Climate Council, and maybe you didn't remember this when you signed up, is that we do not expire on December 1st of this year. This will continue to be important work. So it's actually a life sentence. So just sorry. No, the idea is that the working groups meet at least twice a year on an ongoing basis to see how we are doing, and the council meets 4 times a year to see how we're doing. And again, we will be updating this plan every 4 years. I think everyone in this room understands that the magnitude of this issue is one that we're not going to finish the plan through 2050 this year. It's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be a lot of ongoing work to figure out what works in a state like Maine, which is unique and rural. And then the other big thing is that the DEP will report on state greenhouse gas emissions every 2 years. So the state did just put out a report, and you're going to hear from Stacy on the DEP team today about the state's most recent report, which goes through 2017. So we'll report every 2 years on how we are doing towards these goals, plus the addition, which the governor's executive order requires, which is a report on how we're doing on sequestration and the 2045 goal of carbon neutrality. So again, summary for the Climate Council: we're meeting in January, June, September, and November with the obviously the huge deadline of December 1st for the big plan. So one of the things that was in the legislation, and certainly important to Jerry and I and the governor, is that you are all a huge stakeholder group, and while I think there are 231 or 2 of you, that's not enough. There are clearly thousands of people in our state who have strong opinions, who have concerns, who want to be heard on specific issues concerning climate, and then on sort of broad issues. Just they have opinions about where we should be going. So we are working right now with CBI and the working group chairs and the committees to set up stakeholder meetings starting probably in late March through April. Every working group will have at least 2 meetings with targeted stakeholder groups. I mean, for example, the Natural and Working Lands Committee will be reaching out to foresters, farmers, people involved in conservation in 2 different parts of the state. And so we'll be doing this across the working groups. There's areas of overlap where we imagine some joint meetings, but I think we believe that reaching out more deeply into communities, into varying stakeholder groups is essential. And then there's still thousands of members of the public who email us, who email the governor, who come to public meetings, and they want to be a part of the process, and we think that's incredibly important. So between April and May of this year, we'll be holding at least 4 public meetings in varying regions of the state. And again, the goal is to be distributed geographically, to be open to hear from people on multiple issues, and to really be open to what people have to say. So I know everyone in this room can attend. If you've done math, that's at least 18 more meetings. So it's a lot more meetings, or maybe 16. I'll say 16 more meetings. That's a lot more meetings before the end of the spring. But we invite you to attend 1 or 2 if you can. I know a lot of the working groups will try to send delegations as people are available, but we think this is an important part of the process. And if you're a member of the public who's interested, as soon as those dates are set, we will certainly publicize them, and we want them to have broad and diverse turnout, so stay tuned. In addition to the consensus building folks helping us with process, one of our goals was to make sure that we had data and analysis to help us drive the work that we are doing. And you're going to hear from the Science and Technical Committee, which we are very, very lucky in Maine to have an incredibly talented group of scientists helping to tell us about the impacts of climate on Maine, and you're going to hear from them today. But we also feel it's important to have specific analysis, especially on energy, but also on the adaptation front, about all of the strategies that our groups come up with. We need to understand their costs and their benefits before we make a decision to prioritize them. So we actually just today are announcing that the state has announced an award to a company called Eastern Research Group to provide the cost-benefit analysis and consulting services to the state. They will do 3 tasks, as you see on this slide. Cost-benefit analysis, provide us with a cost of inaction, which obviously is important to understand the stakes, as well as provide us an analysis of the adaptation strategy, so both the mitigation and adaptation strategies. I'm going to turn it over to David to talk to you a little bit more about the agenda for the day. But again, Jerry and I just thank you all for being here and the time that you're putting into this.
Thanks, Hannah.